Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Prospero.ai stock market live streams. We are on a different schedule this week for the Thanksgiving holiday coming up. Market will be closed, and I think there might be a half day, either Wednesday or Friday. So, a holiday week for the stock market world, but we still have a few stories to cover today as we I see some people roll on into the stream. Please like the video as we're getting started. We are approaching 2,000 subscribers on YouTube, so that's pretty cool. So if you haven't done so yet, subscribe to our channel. We are closing in on that milestone. Some of the topics that we're going to be getting into today is there was a bit of panic in the markets last night. If anybody watches the headlines and the market after hours, the market took a turn lower after there was a headline coming out of the Trump administration about some updates on the amount of tariffs that were to be placed or are going to be placed on Mexico, Canada, and China. And the market heard these totals and initially went down pretty aggressively, but came back within the same hour or so. So we have to discuss what these mean for the market going forward, why it was so negatively reacted to at first, but ultimately it didn't seem like the market cared too much. Um, I think we're going to be getting a lot more headlines going forward, and they're going to be providing trading opportunities for the market. Next, we have Warren Buffett making a massive donation. And I thought it was funny in the article I was reading about how he said he didn't want to, quote unquote, like create a royal family type of dynasty for his wealth, passing it on to his children and their children's children. Um, but his children are 65 years old. So I think they've had a pretty good life with the Warren Buffett wealth already. But I thought that was pretty funny. But um, it's a staggering total, the amount that Warren Buffett wants to donate in his lifetime. And George has told our viewers before about how he said he didn't want to donate throughout his investing in the stock market years. He wanted to compound the money so he can donate as much as possible towards the end. And it looks like that's coming true. We got some earnings from little different companies, and they're also heading in different directions. Best Buy and Abercrombie and Fitch. So we've covered the Abercrombie success story and recovery of their brand, and they've had a pretty good 6 quarters. I'll give you some details on that. But Best Buy is not having that same success. Um, they cut their full year sales forecast, and they're noticing a lack of consumer demand for electronics. So I'll ask George about the difference between electronics and clothing, and if they have different cycles. Um, if one is weak, I guess it doesn't necessarily mean the other will be weak. What those mean together, the fact that those companies are seeing different strength of their consumers. And then a part of the market that we have been covering a lot recently because it's been moving higher is Bitcoin finally experienced its first real pullback since the Trump victory. Went from about 99,000 to I think it touched 91,000, if not 92,000. So about a 10% drop over the past couple of days. Is this an opportunity, if you weren't in it yet, to buy the dip in this, or should you let the dust settle? We'll get into all of that. A lot of the crypto related stocks in Prospero have looked very bullish in our signals recently, specifically Coinbase, MSTR, Square, some of the Bitcoin miners, even like CLSK, Riot, Mara. So we'll discuss the crypto space and if anything has changed with our thesis on that. Next, we have Starbucks, which was under a ransomware attack this past week where baristas couldn't view their schedules, and there was even some troubles with paying some of them. And this is now one of the worst, or on pace to be one of the worst cyber attack years in the history of the world. So, what does that mean for the cyber stocks? I would expect bullishness. And one thing to note is that CrowdStrike, which had that major lapse in their services in July of this year that sent the stock tumbling, has now recovered all of those losses already in just a few months. So this sector of the market seems like it's high demand. and it's going to be needed more and more by companies going forward. So looks like the Starbucks story is just another case of that. Then we have Microsoft, Apple, and Google, the tech giants that have just kind of traded sideways for months and months now, all at slightly different time frames. I think Microsoft has been the longest one of all of them since about February. It's just kind of traded in the sideways range. I want to ask George, which of these three companies is the most likely to break out of this sideways trading we're seeing, and which is the most likely one to break down if you had to choose both directions? And is it a good sign that the market has continued to go higher without these companies really, doing the hard work and the heavy lifting of the market? I think it's probably good to see that the market has become less or become more diversified over the past couple of months. It seems like different areas are starting to work, starting to go up. Places that hadn't gotten any love for the past months or even years, small caps, and a lot of less exciting sectors seem to be doing well. The Dow Jones is really doing well recently. So all of that, I believe, has to be good signs. And last but not least, the last topic we'll cover today before we get into the model portfolio update, I believe, at the end of the stream, is going to be Black Friday. I see we have over 50 viewers in the stream right now. Let's see some comments. Who's planning on doing some Black Friday shopping this year? I have some stats about the number of shoppers and the total spending that people did last, excuse me, last Black Friday. So I'm wondering if we're going to beat last year's numbers with this year, if we see some strength in the consumer this go around. One thing that I was reading is that a lot of companies have kind of changed their strategy a bit this year, where they're not going all in on that one day event, but they're trying to really spread it out, and they've already started doing some discounting and deals. So maybe we're not going to top last year's number. Excuse me, my voice keeps going out. Numbers, but we'll see. Okay, what I want to do now that we have gone through all the topics is take a look at the markets and how they are performing today. And then also what we're seeing in Prospero with the net options sentiment for them all. So I'm looking at the markets right now. It looks like a more classical type of distribution that we've seen over the past year. So we have the QQQ leading at about 1/3%, the SPY in the second slot up 0.3%, the Dow Jones down 1/3%, and the IWM, the small caps, down just over 0.5%. So the markets are mixed as of right now. We'll see if anything changes as the stream goes on today. Time to pull up the QQQ and the SPY net option sentiment in Prospero. George, welcome into the stream. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Sorry it took me a little long.
No worries. Okay, so we're going to take a look at the QQQ and SPY net option sentiment today. Looking at the QQQ first, it is at 43, and the SPY is at 41. So that is the closest I've seen these two together in a long time now. And the SPY really, I think that's a good level compared to where we've been at. It's really been lower than the QQQ recently as people were hedging. So maybe we're looking at more of a sustained end of year rally. Obviously, the seasonal calendar is pretty good this time of year. So maybe people are taking those hedging bets for the market to go down off the table. One thing I did want to get into today, George, because after the hours yesterday, the market went down sharply. I don't know if you saw, you probably heard the headlines of how Trump talked about some of the tariffs he was thinking about placing on Mexico, Canada, and China. So the numbers were 25% on Mexico and Canada, 10% additional on China. The market initially went down sharply, but it kind of recovered all of those losses. So can you explain what we saw when those headlines came out?
I mean, I think what we're looking at here is just the classic, like the market doesn't like uncertainty, right? And I think that's all that this is. Like, it's uncertain. It's uncertain. There's people being like, oh, he can't even put the tariffs at that, or those are his tariffs. And there was like some things for China. And then It's just, we talked about this actually, that going into the election, we talked about it in reference to coin and Tesla, like there's a difference between talking about policy and policy, right? So it's one thing if it's policy and the market can bake it in, but talking about policy is an entirely different thing, and that's generally volatile. But I think what people are afraid of, like these tariffs could cause pain in the short term, right? There's a lot of evidence that tariffs just get passed on to the consumer. It's not a tax on the countries, it's a tax on the consumer, and that pretty much the prices just get raised along the supply chain. The long-term results of it, we can talk about, and there are a lot of potential long-term results. There are definitely long-term potential benefits, but in the short term, it's not really good for consumer spending, and that's another thing that kind of always scares the market. We talk about that.
So then why do you think that the market kind of regained all the losses so quickly? Was it that it doesn't expect these to go through, or it was already expecting these and the initial shock was kind of like just like algorithm trading, and then it was already expected, so it recovered? Can you explain why it was like faded and then regained so quickly?
No. Sometimes it's just the market, right? I think that the best way I think to describe what happened is people start freaking out when they hear a news event, and some people start freaking out and selling because they think other people are going to sell, right? And then, people start buying the dip because people are like, maybe they're thinking it's not going to happen in this way, or it's just bluster, or ultimately the economy as a whole is going to be, or the stock market is going to have policies that support it, as we expect with Trump, even if there's a little offset to consumer spending, right? There's so many possibilities, but the basics, right? I kind of had a tongue-in-cheek answer, but the basics of it are that there was some initial fear, and then the market basically said, okay, maybe we don't have, maybe I'd like to buy the dip. Maybe this fear was overblown. I think that's what we're seeing.
Mm-hmm. And I see a comment from Chris talking about how inflation equals tariffs. I think it's probably tariffs equal inflation. But do you expect inflation to be stubbornly high in 2025 because of some of the policies and environment that we're seeing in the stock market?
Well, one of the funniest things that I always see from the last administration to this one, and I especially about economics, I try to be pretty even-handed, and the Biden administration, could have made better moves when they got in. But a lot of Trump's policies last time were inflationary, especially the corporate tax cut. And we talk about this all the time. Most inflationary cycles, about 10% of the inflation is caused by corporate profits. This one was 50%. And then there was a big corporate tax cut. So there's a pretty direct line there. Why Democrats are too stupid to mention that or is beyond me, right? So I think there could actually be a pretty funny situation where there's policies in two different Trump administrations that might cause inflation, but we'll see if the second one he's actually blamed for, because I saw very little blame to him given in the first inflationary cycle. And the thing about this is and why we always try to say very bipartisan, there are, especially if you're going Democrat, Republican, there is no way either political party's hands are clean when you get a tough economic situation. And by the way, the one that we faced was heavily due to supply chain, and pretty much every country experienced inflation when we did. So you could call it, there was pretty much some global impact as well as part of that no one could have controlled for. But especially if you're not talking about 8 years of policy, which we haven't gotten for a bit, you're probably talking about both administrations being responsible for whatever economic situation that you're in, if you're just talking about a 4-year term. And it would be nice if more people could look at it in a complete way like that. But, I think we're sooner to get, I don't know what rare thing. we live in a world today where I'm thinking like, well, maybe whatever I name will happen. We live in a crazy world today, but yeah, the polarization is incredible, and it's really insane how much everyone just blames everything on the other side, all of our woes.
Well, going back to pre-election, polarization was a concern since it was such a binary outcome. And one of the things we were talking about was how crypto was kind of going to be favorited by no matter which administration won. We've seen the rally. Now we've gotten our first pullback from like 99,000. I think it hit 91, so almost a 10% pullback in Bitcoin. I'm just checking your temperature on it. You know, the crypto related stocks that have looked good in our signals. I think I saw MSTR MicroStrategy hit 100 billion market cap, and it's trading like literally 3 times. I think they hold like 30 billion in Bitcoin, so it's trading 3 times in a market cap basis. How are you feeling about that sector? Should people be buying the dip and all of the crypto related names that we discuss?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of back to where we started on the stream, right? I think part of what we're looking at here is the fact that there's a bit of a hangover between Trump winning, everybody getting excited about crypto, but there's not any real policy yet that's backing it. So I think this is just a bit of a dip, right? I think that, like, you know, always when news happens, like at the end of the day, right? How long is it going to be until we get more positive? Like, you know, when Trump takes office and names a very it would be one of the more, I know some people are shocked by some of his appointments. If he didn't like name an incredibly crypto friendly SEC chair, that would be by far the most shocking of the maybe some of the shocking appointments that people are talking about. So that event is going to send the Bitcoin market up, like almost without a doubt. So do you want to maybe yes, could there be a bit of a dip? Could shorters take control of it in the meantime? Yeah, but that's a reason why, I mean, we're just kind of holding our 2 coin positions solid. Part of that is net option sentiment. What I do is I'll check net option sentiment on coin here and there. It's been at solid at 100, upside breakout, dip below, I think to 99, I guess maybe because MSTR went to the top. But yeah, that's the reason we're not sweating it. Probably just a dip going to be bought. Doesn't mean if you're a trader, you can't try to play it. But yeah.
With you speaking right there, I just had an interesting question because I'm not sure how it works. So if you see a dip in net option sentiment, like you just said, from 100 to 99, could that be from another company's, like you said, just surpassing it, and theirs actually doesn't change? They're just not 100 because there's no one above.
Yeah.
Or does that mean a net seller? Okay.
Yeah, that's what happens in any scale. And the other thing, actually, that sometimes people that might not know of, and if you go in the app and you look at like the top, you know, app by search or whatever, what some also might not know is that for a while, like Meta was at 100 and the next highest was like 84 or something. Like, so that the magnitude of the scale matters. So yeah, you can get bumped by just like something charging up and looking better. But you can also, you know, there's a variety of reasons why you could get moved.
That's interesting. I didn't realize that beforehand. I think it'd be cool to see kind of the total bets for the max, the 100 stock, and then the lowest in our system, and see how separated that. Because is it like a net, like monetary basis?
Steven, are you trying to see our underlying data? Nobody gets to see that.
Not even me.
That's above your pay grade. You're coming for the company secrets.
Maybe in a few more years, I'll be able to see that.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know now. Now that you're fishing around, I've never thought you were a spy, but maybe you are.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so building on this crypto topic, we have a great short, if anybody hasn't seen it, that's in our live stream right now, about Warren Buffett has 325 billions to buy Bitcoin. So you can watch that after the stream is over. But this news story came out about how he has just donated 1.1 billion worth of Berkshire Hathaway stock on his quest to donate 99% of his wealth. And you've mentioned before about his plan for doing that and how he's like kind of waited till so he could compound his wealth. But I thought the funny part of this story was they were talking about how Buffett didn't want to give his children, insane wealth. He didn't want to create like a quote unquote royal family dynasty. And then in the article, they mentioned his children are 65 years old. So it's like, well, they had Buffett money their whole life now. So what does it matter?
I mean, is this about his children?
Yeah, actually, his youngest child is 65. So there's some that are even older.
I was like, is this what the comment is on? I would say like whenever I hear this type of stuff, like, and I'm not really one for, I think there should be more inheritance tax. And I think that like, here's the problem. I see the side where you don't want to necessarily give to the government when they're not doing it versus your own wealth or whatever. But I almost always think when I hear stuff like this, that these parents think their kids are spoiled. Even that 65-year-old kid, he probably thinks is spoiled. And that's the only reason you say that kind of thing. And I feel like it's probably on the parents and all that. And you should give to charity. But the only reason it's like a headline or anything like that is if you really want to stick it to your kids, right? Otherwise, you can carve out some nice slice and give most of it to charity. You don't have to like single out it in general. Like the only reason you'd actually like get up on your pedestal and talk about this is if you want to stick it to your kids a little bit. I mean, maybe you want to encourage also other people to give, but Buffett's a smart guy. I don't think people would say like $1 billion versus, Buffett's hundreds of billions are really going to give. Like Buffett giving away his money isn't going to change their mind, right? And I think he's smart enough to know that. So, the only person that I think is being talked to when this kind of thing happens is the kids of the person speaking. Mm-hmm. It reminds me of Succession too. Like, oh, that's a great show. But like, mm-hmm. I just feel like that was such a great show about like what happens behind the scenes of these like families that grow up with like immense wealth, and I think it's probably a huge challenge to not have your kids be spoiled. But I think once you have spoiled your kids, the last thing you want to like, you have to realize that the last thing they need is for you to just like leave all the money. That's like the worst thing you can do to your kids and the world.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a problem a lot of us would probably like to have, but I guess maybe we'll get there one day. Two stocks.
I mean, I don't know, Steven. Like, it's one of those things. Like, I think for anyone, I'm not saying rich, poor, whatever. That you should be like, if you don't have much money, you should be feeling sorry for rich people. That's the last thing I'm saying. But I like some of the most unhappy and fucked up kids I knew in like New York private school growing up were profoundly wealthy, right?
I get that point.
Yeah.
Because it ruins their mindset.
Yeah, it's challenging. And I can make an even yeah. Well, you don't even know how much he gets, Mario. It's possible he gets like Buffett eats McDonald's. Like, I don't know much about Buffett's kid, but it's quite possible that Buffett's kid gets $0 and a lot of shit about not being as good than his dad. Like, I'm not sure Buffett's son gets anything. It's not like Buffett has like houses to vacation at. He's got his house in Nebraska, like that he's lived in forever, right? Buffett's not a traditional rich person. Like normally I would be closer to where you're at, but yeah, I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure about that one. I mean, Buffett's wife like left him, like, she moved to San Francisco, and I think they're still on decent terms. And I think without I watch documentaries on him, I don't want to like speak on something I don't really know. But it seemed like the basics of why she left was that she maybe expected him to retire and like enjoy his life at some point, and he was like, I enjoy reading about these companies, like, and then is just basically going to do that until he dies. So yeah, I'm not sure, like, not like, hey, I'm a big person on like, whatever floats your boat, not trying to take anyone down, just I'm like talking about the facts as I've heard them. I mean, the facts as I understand them, not as I've heard them. But yeah, it's definitely one of the more interesting situations. But yeah, the only thing I was going to close with is there's this very interesting thing in history called like the alternating kings theory. And it's not perfect, but it's talked about how a lot of really remarkable leaders, their kids were not remarkable. And this is like irrespective of money. We're just talking about leaders. And a lot of that is postulated because their parents made things look easy. A lot of good leaders make it all look easy, right? And so their kids think that they don't have to work on themselves and they don't have to do much, so they kind of suck, right? And then actually what happens a lot of the times is their kids see that they suck and they actually like want to put in the work to be good people. So you actually do in history, and a lot of the times you see that phenomenon take place. So like, yeah, like just to close, like it is quite possible that Warren Buffett's kids suck, but growing up in that shadow, like especially like, I don't know what his kids do, but especially if you're trying to go into business, like how do you even like stack up in that situation? And I'm sure it's pretty rough, but also just say I'm sure it's pretty rough for someone with a lot of privilege. The majority of the world lives in much worse circumstances than that. But the only other thing I'll say to that is a lot of people can torture themselves in their own minds a lot more than, someone that just has some adverse circumstances that's making the best of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess if his kids suck, it's good news for his grandchildren. We'll see what they're up to.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I mean, but it's like, yeah, they're gonna have to scrape their way. I don't think they're getting anything.
Mm-hmm. So two stocks I wanted to bring up because their signals in Prospero look bullish, and it's interesting because I feel like when a smaller cap stock is on our short-term bull list, that's been a good sign recently. So one of them I wanted to bring up today was GSAT, Global Star, I believe, which has been linked to Apple for like so long, I feel like, which was looking good in our app. And then we got a comment, our famous haters on our AMC shorts commented about Cinemark and was asking about it. And I actually looked it up in Prospero, and I was shocked at how good it looks in our signals when compared to like how bad AMC looks. So those two stocks I wanted to bring up and get your opinion on, and how they're looking.
The ticker on Cinemark. Oh, CNK. Yep. Yeah. Shockingly good. Well, I mean, that's kind of funny because that comes full circle. Cinemark went through a reorganization, right? And they came out of it a lot better with a lot more of an efficient business. And that would actually probably really help AMC. Yeah, those AMC haters. I gotta pull up a comment. There was one that was just the funniest because I gotta get this guy.
I've been responding to some of them now, just trying to get them to watch our lives because we don't get any comments like that during our live discussions on it, but only in the shorts.
Oh my God. Okay. There's a guy that said that I was Ken Griffin's butt buddy, and then said I'm gay for AMC, right? Which, by the way, I'm going to call you out right there, where it's just like, look, is being someone's butt buddy a derogative term? Because if you're coming for gay people, right, then maybe then you saying you're gay for AMC, I'm confused, right? are you saying that being a butt buddy is bad? Because it seemed like that, and then you're gay for AMC. I don't know. I mean, you seem a little confused about your sexuality, among other things. But it's I think it's just so funny, like how little someone would have to know me to think that I was a Ken Griffin like shill. But they have a playbook. These people online, and like, yeah, it's amazing. Like how many and on that one video that's older, like they all come to like it, and I'm sure they like send around the link. It's just like, Jesus Christ, people. Like, what are you doing? Like, either you are not a real person or you enjoy losing money. AMC is not a good company. And like, I mean, I did well with AMC. I saw everything that you saw, and then I saw when it turned to garbage. And it's just like, I cannot believe what I'm seeing. It's really, really sad that the AMC cult is still recruiting new people into it, and that Adam Aaron is indulging it. But we shouldn't give this any more time. I did think that comment deserved that guy was a very interesting fellow. Oh, he also said that Elon Musk and Donald Trump were coming for me, which he clearly hasn't looked at our portfolio. We're pretty long the Trump trade, so I don't know if that was an encouraging they're coming for me. Like, it's like, great, yeah, I've been investing in their stuff. But yeah, it's so funny. How do we know when the show times change? Oh, in our Sunday letter, we always send out the show times. Monday and Wednesday are our typical, but since we weren't doing Wednesday this week, we decided to just do one Tuesday, as opposed to just doing one at the beginning of the week. This way we could balance out the week a little more.
And I'm happy you found us, Mario, since you didn't even know the show was going on. I do want to circle back to GSAT, if you have any thoughts on that, because I don't know too much about the company, but from what I was reading, it seems like they're a space satellite linked to Apple type of play, and they look good in our signal. So is there any, I know we've talked about, how that area with Rocket Lab and ASTS.
Yeah, we like that area. I'm checking their market cap. 3.45. Yeah, this looks like I might add it later. They're down today, but yeah, they look, it looks, I mean, for a 3.45 market cap company, they look really good in the signals. And as for Cinemark looks good in the signals, but I don't know. I just like, for my haters out there, I know you're going to love to hear this. I just really can't get behind movie theater stocks. Like, I think at the end of the day, no matter how it looks, yeah, I just can't do it. But Globustar looks good, especially for smaller cap stock. I will consider adding it. Quantum computing, we like IonQ. It continues to look better and better in our signals. The downside's going up a little, but the upside is 83 growth, which is great. I mean, to be honest, I haven't dug in. I think there was a plan for me and Dave Lauer to do this at some point. Was it robots? Maybe we should do a deep dive on like robots and quantum computing. But IonQ is what we like there. If there's some other names, I can look at them in Prospero, do some research. But what I was gonna say is like I don't really even know. I don't even really know how they're making money yet. Maybe pre-orders or whatever, but I would like to research that more.
Quantum computing is something that scares me because if quantum computing becomes a real thing, doesn't it kind of like break a lot of, I don't know, password security, functionality of things that operate on the internet? Like from what my very, limited understanding is that it's like game changing with the speed and the type of technology that it is.
I think we don't know enough about it yet, right? I think we know like a lot of it in theory, what it would do, how it could accelerate computing, what it could enable. A lot of it is it could be more efficient. Yeah, I mean, the reason it breaks encryption, Chris, is because normally what's called brute force penetration techniques, it requires too much computing hours to do, and with a more powerful computer, it can just brute force things, just basically trying every combination until it gets it, or trying it intelligently. A lot of what the actual hacking systems will do is a combination, like the AI ones, is a combination of like brute force, trying lots of combinations, as well as like some kind of intelligence, breaking in, hacking into people's stuff. There's a lot of like e-commerce is in danger. Like one of the like quantum computing and AI, the other thing that people don't talk about it much is social media, right? With that, there's going to be flooded with bots for the same reason e-commerce. Flooded with bots, you won't know if you're talking to a real person or not anymore, especially with the way AI is going. Yes, well, Mario, also the only quantum resist. Yeah, I mean, it's the kind of, you fight fire with fire, right? The best way to keep out a smart computer that could say use brute force things is something that changes like the passwords every couple minutes and then encrypts. Basically when you send your password and encrypts it on, basically it's gonna get pretty wacky. The one other thing. Oh, I saw something up there. Bitcoin options. I don't know if you mean options on Bitcoin, or like we don't actually recommend exposure to single cryptocurrencies. That's why we recommend Coinbase. We really like it. Prospero likes it. I think it's a better way to just get exposure to this without the risk of individual cryptocurrencies. And we also like, for a smaller cap thing, CleanSpark, just because Prospero Signals really like it. It's smaller cap. It has more room to grow if you want something riskier. But Coin is, we also say don't overthink it. We like Coin.
Well, building off this quantum topic and safety, cybersecurity, a company actually recently got hacked, Starbucks, and their scheduling for their entire locations was messed up. Baristas couldn't see their schedules. There were some problems with paying some of them, and I believe they just had to pay the ransom that the attacker was charging them. And 2024 is on pace to be one of the worst years on record. One thing I was curious about when I saw this story is I checked out CrowdStrike. Their stock has now round-tripped that entire everything they gave up in July when they had that lack in their systems, and is now back to near highs. So got to be, I mean, we've covered it before, but just if anybody's new here watching, like cybersecurity space seems like one of the better spaces to be in going forward with all the tech.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, on the same answer. I wouldn't recommend Bitcoin. I would recommend Coin. Like I would recommend Coin or CleanSpark. I wouldn't recommend, like, it's easier to use the BlackRock ETF. Sure. Like if you're going to use an ETF, we recommend BLOK because that's a lot more just diversified, just general blockchain, crypto. But yeah.
So throughout history, the leading companies in the world come and go, and it's tough to imagine the Mag 7, not being what they are today in the future. But with the regulatory pressure we've seen and these new technologies like AI and quantum computing, is this the type of recipe to have a change in leadership at the top of the stock market, where next generation AI, quantum computing, maybe space, companies will take the throne as being the most valuable companies in the world, and the Mag 7, as we know today, is in the last inning or towards the end of their run at the top?
Nah, I don't think so. I mean, the thing is, NVIDIA is working on their own quantum computing stuff. So are like a lot of the Mag 7, like, and then also just like the path of capitalism is just more and more concentration, right? Like, the fact of the matter is, if there is a groundbreaking technology, I doubt it makes it to a real level of competition versus being acquired by one of the giant companies. I just don't, like, that isn't to say there won't be new winners. There will. There's always the next NVIDIA, right? NVIDIA wasn't around. It came around, right? Google wasn't around. Like, there's always going to be new players that come in, right? But it doesn't mean the old players leave, right? And that's where I think we're at. I think some of these, like, especially just when like just looking at Amazon alone, right? Amazon, Meta has like such a loyal user base, like with Instagram and like WhatsApp and at this point, right? Like, those Amazon and Meta, especially, like Google, you can make the argument maybe they lose search, and then what are they? But actually, they're coming on pretty strong with YouTube. But like Meta, Amazon, there's some other ones that are just, I have a hard time seeing anyone getting rid of them versus just joining their party.
So
I'll make one more comparison where it's just like, to be honest, I don't even know what's going on with IBM, but it was like very high in momentum score last week. I haven't even read about it just because I don't care about IBM. I think they're dumb. But even them that have like handled technological advancement as like they were the leader, they handle, like, Palantir shouldn't exist. IBM should be doing like their tech consulting. Like, IBM with all the resources should have been doing what Palantir does. Palantir shouldn't exist if IBM wasn't asleep at the wheel, right? Like, OpenAI shouldn't exist if IBM wasn't asleep at the wheel. They were in all of this. Like, they had Watson, right? Watson was like a lot of the way to an LLM. But look at that. They're still around. They're still a 200 billion market cap company. So it's very hard to get rid, like, even if you're surpassed by these other companies, right? It's hard to like get rid of you. So that's what I think. I think we could see a new company that becomes the largest company in the world that isn't one of these companies. It doesn't mean the other ones are going to go away.
And I wanted to highlight a few of them on the stream today because I've been noticing that they've been kind of trading sideways, like Microsoft, Apple, and Google, as the market continues to go higher. So maybe that's a good sign that the market is diversifying. But Microsoft specifically, since like February, has kind of done nothing. If you had to pick between these three companies, Microsoft, Apple, and Google, one you think will break out of the range it's been in, and one that could break down from the range it's been in, which would you choose each way out of those three?
I'm surprised I'm saying this, but I think Microsoft's the one that's a no. Like, and Apple is kind of always the one that I pick on, but I think they're starting to do some smart things with AI. And I think they're still the one that I would say the most likely to break down. But like, I honestly think the whole market's going to carry up. But one of the things that am I frozen? Oh no. To break down, but like one of the things that I am like, we have Perplexity starting to come for Google. Google actually had that ruling we're going to have to break out Chrome. Like, they're not figuring out this Gen AI thing as well as I feel like we've been sitting here for a while. I've been saying they have the best AI brain and they have every reason to believe that they could do it, but they haven't. They're not that, like, so I am starting to get a little worried about Google. I put them closer to Apple for the first time. But I still like Google better just because I like their tech better.
And we saw that highlight of the tickers that Chris shared of the quantum computing stocks. If anybody is interested in checking them out, thank you, Chris, for sharing that. Okay. So two stocks I wanted to bring up because they were moving in opposite directions, and they shared very different readings on their consumer. So I'm wondering which one we think is more accurate, or if they weigh in on one another. So Best Buy cut their full year guidance, and they're seeing softer demand for electronics, while Abercrombie expects a strong holiday quarter, and they've now grown over 10% for six straight quarters in their revenue. So maybe Best Buy is seeing the lag from the stimulus and COVID. People bought electronics. I guess they last for like 5, 10 years, whatever, before you need to replace them. So maybe that's why they're seeing the lag now, while Abercrombie is seeing consumer strength. Is there anything to read into that? The consumer of electronics versus clothing, is there different cycles, and which one do you think is a more accurate representation of how people are nowadays?
No, I think we're just seeing a similar thing to when we were talking about, Target and Walmart, where it's just like, I think people are being more selective. They're not necessarily like cutting back on everything, but there is definitely evidence that people are being more selective on what they spend on. And like, I think with all of the online stuff and as delivery's gotten faster, Best Buy just isn't offering that much anymore. Especially there's so much stuff on Amazon that comes the next day now. Like, that's the real competition, right? 2-day was one thing where you'd go, oh, maybe I'll still go to Best Buy because I want it today, right? But when it's now become like a 2-day thing, but now it's become a 1-day thing for a lot of stuff, like it really is a situation where like most of the time you're gonna be spending more at Best Buy. Like on the off chance that you can have a comparable product, you still have to like leave your house. They have less locations, right? Like there used to be one closer to my house. Now it's a bit of a longer trip. So it's really like they're just surviving on like people like, oh, like I lost my laptop cord and I need to go to work today kind of market, right? Otherwise, everybody could just wait a day. They don't have a real business. It's just like the convenience factor. Even if Best Buy can compete on price, with most of the time they can't, it's not going to show up at your door.
And I think everything you just said is a lot of the struggles that most of the retailers are going through right now. If our economy stays strong, we're heading into the holiday season. It hasn't seemed like we've ever really liked these stocks in our history of our live streams. If now isn't the time, I guess never is. But is there any interest across any retailers from you across the board? Any companies?
No, not that I can think. Like, I mean, I think Dick's Sporting Goods is something that like here and there appears well on our signals, and I think we've added it, right? I think there's a few that are just like all right, but like no, generally we just stay away from them. We generally short them. Like I don't have. I think if there's one lesson I can impart on a high level around this stuff, it's that I don't really believe in retail long term, right? And there's people that will, be like, oh, this is just a short-term trade or whatever. But the way I operate, if I don't really believe in something long term, I tend not to even want to own it for a small amount of time, because I think you're on borrowed time and you just don't know how many other people are thinking like that. So here and there, I'll throw something in, but I think at the crux of it is that.
So that's type of thought process of like tailwinds versus headwinds for a sector. Even if you're slightly wrong, maybe if you're investing in a sector with tailwinds, maybe you'll get lucky. Maybe your process will result in a win because of that factor versus the other way around when, these businesses are kind of dying out slowly, like we've covered across the stream. Okay. I have one more topic for today before we turn it over to the model portfolio update. And it is bringing up Black Friday, because it is coming up. Let's see, show of hands in the chat, who's expecting they're going to be buying something this Friday with some of the holiday deals and discounts. Bringing back up stats from last year. So 183.4 million shoppers between Thanksgiving and Cyber Monday purchased an item. 131.7 million of that was Black Friday alone. total spending was $12.4 billion, 9.8 of which came from online. So, do you expect that we'll be able to beat those numbers this year? One thing that I was reading was that some companies are taking a different strategy where they were trying to kind of lengthen and not emphasize the day Black Friday as much. So maybe we won't see the totals be higher. But what do you anticipate this holiday shopping season to be?
I think it's going to be interesting, right? Because I feel like most of what we hear is that, Black Friday is just getting bigger, better, everything. I think we definitely are in an age where consumption is just, I think in social media is part of this. Everybody just wants to consume more, especially around the holidays, right? That's the trend. And I think we see it get better and better. I think there's no reason that we don't see that. And that's why we see, these things extended. I think people are just prepared to spend money at these times. But that is one thing to watch out for, right? This market is looking a little more nervous, right? That, I think long term, we expect things to go well with Trump in office. But until that actually happens, I think we could see more volatility, and there is some risk of perhaps some underwhelming Black Friday stuff. But at the same time, I don't really expect it, right? We don't necessarily we see some hiccups in consumer spending, but we see more of that in terms of preference. And even I would say this summer when there was a little more worry, there was whatever it was in the summer, the July one, I forget what it's called. That one went really well. So yeah, I'm not expecting anything but good things.
I think that's like the Amazon Prime Day that they have
Oh yeah,
4 times a year now, instead of once a year like it used to be. Okay, that's a wrap on the topics I had for today. I don't see any questions.
Yeah, and we're not going to do the switch over, so I think we're just done.
We're not going to do the switch over.
Yeah, have a happy Thanksgiving, everyone, and to the viewers, I'm in London next week, so we are going to have another revised schedule, and we'll figure that out and get back to you about it.
All right, so everybody, thank you, George. Have a happy Thanksgiving. Check that Sunday newsletter for the times. We'll see you all next week.